And so we can see the incinerator directly in front of the bus now, the white building with the smoke. The convenience store on the left is just having its opening ceremony now, actually. It's just being opened.
Just now.
Right now. See with the ribbon they're cutting? Maybe we can see this on the TV tonight.
焼却炉はだいたいこの辺の各町に1個ずつあるんですけども。
And so the incinerators, as we can see in front, most of the towns in this area have one each. On the left we can see the earthquake impact on this house here. You can see the roof and so on damaged.
震災後に津波の瓦礫やゴミや家の片付けゴミを燃やすために作られて。
And so the incinerators in each of these towns was built first to burn the tsunami rubble, so the various rubble and waste and so on, and destroyed housing materials and so on from after the disaster. And so it's about 50 billion yen per incinerator. And they're only used for about 2 years.
And what is the local
It said that barely any radiation. It's not zero, but it said barely.
でも多分事故の時に出た放射能の量と比べると比べ物にならないぐらい低いから気にならないっていう言い方。
And so probably the reason people say it's barely any is just because compared to the amount of radiation which was coming out at the time of the disaster, it's nothing compared to that. So that's why people are maybe putting it in that phrase.
仕組みは一般の焼却炉と変わらなくてフィルター装置が2つになってるだけ。元普通のは1個でフィルター装置が2つになってるだけがある。
And it's also being made in a bit of a different way to normal incinerators. Usually they would have just a single filter. However, this one has double filtering as well as one of the measures.
で、2年の意味はフィルターを交換する時期が2年に1回らしくて、多分それも一つの理由。なんでかというと交換する作業をするのが大変。
And one of the reasons that the incinerators are only used for 2 years is because it said that the filter lasts for 2 years. And it would be such a huge undertaking to change the filter that they say they'll just use it for one filter lifetime. So you can see all around here the effects of the disaster, the earthquake damage here. And this is Tomioka. We're very close to the Tomioka train station here. So this is mostly earthquake damage that you can see to the buildings here.
右側の電柱の看板は東北電力の看板なんですけど。
And on the right, you can see signs on the electricity poles. It says Tohoku Electricity Company.
子供たちの未来のためにと書いてある。
And the slogan which is written on there is for the future of the children.
震災後に見るとちょっと面白い。
For the future of the children. Tohoku Electricity Company. And so the earthquake around this area was a magnitude of a little bit more than 6. And so because of the fact that it was only recently that people could start to return to this area, that's why you can see the earthquake damage just left as it was from right after the disaster. And This area here was all full of houses, and it was all destroyed by the tsunami.
でそれから見えてくるグレコンバンクの山がよく上からヘリとかドローンで撮られて使われると。
And the bags that we can see in front of us, the black bags, this is one of the sites that's actually often used in photographs from the air. You know, you see photographs by airplane or drone and so on. It's often of this location because there's so many of them located here.
今渡っているとこが常磐線の線路。
And we're just crossing what the Joban train line was here.
で、袋の一番外にひらがなで遮蔽って書いてあるのは、一番外側は綺麗な土を置いて、放射線を遮蔽している。
And there's actually on the very outside layer of these bags here, the writing in Japanese, it says it's kind of the blockage, and so that's actually they use clean soil in the outside bags as a kind of protective layer.
Et tu vois, il y a un mot japonais.
右側の葉っぱがついている木はもちの木っていう木なんだけど、あれちょっと覚えておいてください。左側にも葉っぱがついている木があります。
And we can see these trees. There's one tree on the right and also some on the left with the leaves on them. It's something important for us to remember that we'll explain.
Look at those bags. They're just like chocolate.
ちょっと短時間なのでここに押して入れられます。はい。
Because it's so irradiated. They can't. Wow.
今入れ出してる防災林は大体松で作られるんですけど、長葉にももちの木の列が残って、海からすごい近いところにもちの木の並木が残っています。
And so a lot of the coastal areas around here, as one of the protective layers, had rows of trees to kind of form a barrier or a wall, you know, in case of a disaster and so on. And actually, these trees that you can see here, the one in front of us with the leaves, it was part of what's still left here in this coastal area.
正面が福島第二原発。
And in front of us, we can see the Fukushima Dai-2 nuclear power plant, so the number 2 nuclear power plant. And these trees are holly trees, sorry.
で左手が海。
And on the left, we can see the ocean.
どれだけ外海に面して立ってるかっていうのはよくわかるかもしれない。
And so you can see how the nuclear power plant is located right next to the, you know, the open ocean here.
あそこの海岸線まで行くともっとよくわかるんですけど、ちょっと通行止めになってるので。
And if you go right up to the coast, you can see very clearly, but the road is blocked off today, so we won't be going right up to the coast. So there was another road from here as well, but after the tsunami, that road is not usable anymore.
だから左、富岡ポートを直してるんだけど、
And on the left, that's where the Tomioka port was located. They're in the process of reconstructing.
多分ポートって言っても釣り船しかいなくて、
But it was called a port, but it was just very small fishing boats that were built here.
まあ何でもかんでも今直しちゃえっていうのが国全体の政策。
And so you can see that even though it's just a very, very small facility for small fishing boats, the national policy now is to rebuild everything. So even something in a place like this, they're working on the construction. And so there are the two nuclear power plants, the Fukushima Dai-1 or the number 1 nuclear power plant, and then the Fukushima Dai-2 or number 2. There are 2 reactors at the Fukushima Dai-2 plant, which is the one we can see in front of us, and there are 4 reactors located at Fukushima Dai-1, which is where the disaster occurred. And the Fukushima Dai-2 nuclear power plant, it's not operating at the moment, but it hasn't been designated for actually being stopped permanently or decommissioned. It's just for regular maintenance or checks and so on is the official designation of it.
第2の立地も第 第一の立地も基本的に変わらないので、ここで見た感じに第一もあってちょっと第一の方がいい。
And the positioning of the Daini number 2 and the Daiichi number 1 nuclear power plants is quite similar in terms of its location to the ocean and so on, so you can have an image of what it's like. The difference is that the Daiichi is a little bit lower. And so the train line that we've just crossed over was a completely normal in-use train line until the disaster. And we can see here the tsunami and earthquake damage on these buildings and poles and so on. And this So on the left you can see also the buildings or shops destroyed by the tsunami and earthquake. So we were just asking about the height of the tsunami wave here as well. It's a little bit hard to say the exact number, but if you look at the second floor of the buildings, you can tell whether it reached that high or not as well. So whether the windows are still in place on the second floor or not.
これから U ターンするとこが富岡駅です。
And where we are U-turning now is where the Tomioka train station was located. So right in front of us, that was the platform of the train station. And until a little bit more than a year ago, some of the station building was actually still remaining here, of course very damaged.
あれちょっとお堂があるんですけど、
And you can see sort of the building with the pointy roof on our left.
大体お寺ってちょっと高いところにあって津波から助かってることが多いです。
And so this is a temple, Buddhist temple, and in most cases, the temple is located in slightly higher ground and usually survived the tsunami.
浪江もそうなんですけど、集落がギリギリ津波が来なかったところとかあるので、やっぱり歴史的に古いとこは津波がギリギリ来ないところに建てられている。
And also in Namie as well, but looking at the position of where houses or the villages and so on are built, because this area is very prone over history to tsunamis also, you can tell in areas with long tradition or older settlements, they are generally built a little bit higher, so in places where the tsunami did not come.
私の考えは必ずしも脱原発ではないけれど、こういう今のお寺がって言ったように危ないところには作らないとか、そういうことが基本的なことができなければやるべきではないと。
So my personal stance on nuclear power plants is I'm not necessarily completely against nuclear power itself, but if we look at the situation, well, they should not, if they cannot be built in places which are safe, they should not be built anywhere.
家の壊れ方について言うと、新しい建築基準で作られた家はそんなに倒れてなくて、倒れてるのは昭和40年とかそれより前に作られた家。
And so in regards to the damage to the buildings as well, you can see of course some completely destroyed but some still standing. That depends a lot on whether they were built according to new building standards or whether they were older. So those houses which were built in the 70s or 60s and so on tended to not survive. But ones which had been built more recently according to more strict standards, some of them are more still standing.
「
It's about 0.27 is the dosage here.
右側
On the right,
ちょっとヨーロピアン
there's a kind of European style building.
ここに来て地元の小学生が原発の中の仕組みを習ったりして
This is where the local primary school students would come to learn about nuclear power plants and how they work, like a study session, study area.
この辺からそうですね
And so this area now it's all of a sudden gone up to 0.68, so it's 3 times what it was just a minute ago on the road. And this area here is all designated as a difficult to return zone. So it's not only an evacuation, but it's also expected that people will not be able to return here. So this is still Tomioka town. 0.77, 0.86. It really increases as we get closer and closer to the plant here. Now it's just past 1 microsievert per hour. And that's inside the bus also. Whoa, whoa, 0.66, 1.27. It just keeps going up, 0.7, no. So the sign on the right, in the black and red writing, says bikes, motorbikes, and so on are not allowed to enter from here. And so you can see barricades on both sides of the roads as we come into the difficult to return zone. So you can't go onto the side streets from here either. On every side street that comes off the highway, there are barricades. And so this is all earthquake damage on the right. And on the right, we can see another large temporary storage zone for the waste. And on the left, if you can see the glass in the buildings and so on.
建物の柱は大丈夫なんだけど、ああいう大きい倉庫みたいな感じの建物のガラスは大体地震で割れてます。
And so you can see how well the structural parts of these large buildings might have been in place. When you look at the glass, you can tell in a lot of them that it was damaged at the time. This one here was about to open the next day, the large one we passed. From this area is very famous for its cherry blossoms.
信号左行くと与野森っていうとこです。
So if you would turn right at the next lights, there's a park called Yonomori Park or the Night Forest Park, which was really renowned for its sakura. Now we're 2.58 microsieverts per hour. And on the sign outside, it said 2.9 microsieverts per 2.9というのが今表示として出ていました。
この辺除染する前に房を買ってるのがよくわかるかな。草とか木。
And so you can see here before the decontamination the way that they were, chopping the grasses and trees and so on also.
木の方が多いですね。もう5年経つと木が生えちゃう。
But now, 5 years have passed, so you can see there's the regrowth and so on.
震災前は田んぼで。
And this was rice fields before the disaster.